بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين نحمده ونشكره ونستعينه ونستغفره ونصلي ونسلم على سيدنا ونبينا أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين محمد وعلى آله الطاهرين وصحبه المنتجبين اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. Praise be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Lord of here and the hereafter. We praise Him and we thank Him. We ask His forgiveness and we ask for His assistance. We convey our greeting and salutation to the most noble of all prophets, Prophet Muhammad and his pure progenies. Sisters and brothers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah wa ala al-arwah allati hallat bifina'ik. Alayka minni salamullah abadan ma baqit wa baqiya al-layl wa al-nahar. Wa la ja'alahu Allah akhir al-ahd min ziyaratikum. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي ابن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم: لو لم يبق من الدنيا إلا يوم واحد لطول الله عز وجل ذلك اليوم حتى يبعث رجلا من ولدي اسمه اسمي يملأ الأرض قسطا وعدلا. فقام سلمان الفارسي فقال: يا رسول الله من أي ولدك؟ قال: من ولدي هذا، وضرب بيده على الحسين. The Holy Prophet of Islam, this is one of those famous traditions. Although there are many traditions in this regard, one of the famous tradition regarding the coming of Al-Mahdi and at the end of time. The hadith says that if there is only one day left from the life of this world, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to prolong it until somebody from his descendant, from the Holy Prophet's descendant, will come that has this similar ism and name, and يملأ الأرض قسطا وعدلا is going to fill the earth, to make earth full of justice and equity as previously was filled with injustice. In this hadith, in this particular hadith that by the way is narrated from Tabarani, Ibn Asakir, Ibn Qayyim and others from Sunni sources, Salman al-Farsi stands up and he says, Ya Ibn Rasulullah, from which of your sons? The Holy Prophet touches the hand of Imam Hussein and says, from him. The world, literal crude translation, the world will not come to an end, said the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, until a man from my family and my name will be the master of this world, establishes justice and equity after it was teeming with injustice and tyranny. Salman stood up and asked, from which of your sons, the Holy Prophet? He said, he pointed to Imam Hussein and he said, from his descendant. Last night, a brief recap, we briefly touched upon a number of issues. We pointed out that for the Shia Twelvers, the concept of imama and wilaya is critical. Occultation becomes a central theme which distinguishes Shia Twelvers from everybody else within the Muslim world. The return of Al-Mahdi is critical and pivotal concept in our theological understanding. Occultation and the concealment, both minor and major, is also part of this occultation. And because there were there are, in our history, as I explained briefly last night, two events stand out as monumental and major that change the direction of history. One is Ashura, and ultimately one will be the return of the 12th Imam. So recently, around 30 or 40 years ago, the scholars began to, part of the books and Mawsu'a, the huge volumes that they have written about the life of the 12th Imam, including one written by Sayyid Muhammad Sadr in Iraq, Allah yarhamu, the Shaheed Sayyid Muhammad Sadr, Al-Mawsu'a lil-Imam Al-Mahdi. They began addressing and comparing these two concepts, the relationship between Ashura and the return of the Imam. And somehow looking at various factors within this return, the socio-political condition that prevailed for Ashura and comparing it with the one that will prevail in the coming of the Holy Imam, the character of the followers of Imam Hussein salawatullah salam alayhi in Karbala, and the character of those who are going to assist the 12th Imam later on in his return, how the victory is going to be won. Is it somehow miraculously by divine intervention or through human agency? These are some of the issues that we have talked about. Tonight, I want to focus on a brief biographical account of the life of the 12th Imam. Without clear understanding of that, nothing will fit into the whole picture. But before I do that, about 20, 30 years ago, a couple of books came out, particularly within what we call Orientalist project. People began to write books, non-Muslims, non-Shias, began to write books about the life of the 12th Imam within the Shia theological basis. The project was to compare Judeo-Christian messianic movement and Messiah within Judeo-Christian concept, and say that what we have in the Shia tradition is not much different from the movement of Messiah in Judeo-Christian tradition. Particularly troubling was that they said that right from the early history of Islam, the notion of the 12th Imam, or the concept of the Messiah, or the return of the Messiah did not exist. It is, according to these Orientalists, something that has been constructed over many decades, if not centuries. Naturally, similar to this kind of Orientalist project, we had with the Quran. Again, that the Quran was really the construct of the Holy Prophet. It's nothing to do with the revelation itself. So a similar kind of project existed. Specifically for them, the role of the political institution for bringing or constructing this notion of the return of the Mahdi, and again moving towards what they call the Safavi movement and others that came to rule Iran and the Shia world. Unfortunately for them, such hypothesis disregards ample ahadith and literature that we have right from the Holy Prophet's time and then successive Imams after. We see this during the life of the Holy Prophet. This is one hadith that, by the way, this type of hadith has been narrated both from the Shia and the Sunni sources. I just picked up this version of it that is narrated by Tabarani, Ibn Asakir al-Qayyim, primarily from the Sunni sources. Not only during the life of the Holy Prophet, we have a hadith during the life of the Imams. Amir al-Mu'mineen refers to the concept of the return of Mahdi. And again, similar to approach that the Holy Prophet had regarding touching Imam Hussein, Amir al-Mu'mineen touches the son of Imam Hussein and says, son, the ultimate Mahdi is going to be the 9th successor. The numbers are specified. the 9th successor from your descendant. So the concept of Mahdi, not only we have ample proof to speak about the detail, the name, the number of Imams and so on that come after. There are ahadith from the Holy Prophet that makes a list of the 12 Imam, one after the other. That one is Akhi, they say who's Akhi? He says Ali, and then his sons, Hassan and Hussein, and then Hussein's son, etc., until the 12th Imam. But what they have confused is that the concept of Mahdawiyya for these scholars have been reduced into just a personality or some kind of the name that a person will come and lead the society. What they have misunderstood is the fact that Mahdawiyya is the concept of the establishment of justice on earth, which ultimately is going to prevail after human failure over many decades and centuries, if not millennia. Mahdi is just the instrument, the divinely guided individual that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives the power to go ahead in establishing justice. But still, human agency is needed. The issue of istikhlaf, that the notion that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to give the earth as to those who submit to the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inheriting the earth is not going to be miraculous. Otherwise, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to create this, He would have done it ages ago. He says that only those are going to inherit the earth that they will submit to the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, not only this, then we have seen the concept of Mahdawiyya, that there is a person that exists and then disappears, claimed by a number of, call it schools and various factions within Islam. The earliest appeal to Mahdawiyya are the followers of Muhammad ibn Hanafiya, the son of Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullah salam alayhi, in Kufa, and the one that Mukhtar somehow appealed, or this concept appealed to him, and he was part of the followers. These people claim that Muhammad ibn Hanafiya died or disappeared and he is the Mahdi, he's gone into occultation. So within what we have, literally 50 or 55 years after the demise of the Holy Prophet, around the year 65, we have people claiming to be the Mahdi. The Zaydis did the same thing, people who are in Yemen. Fatimiyas in Egypt did it. The Ismailis, both the Bohra and the Akhanis, have done the same thing. The Waqifiyas did it, and naturally the Twelvers. Is a central concept that if we peel the notion of who's going to be the leading of this society ultimately to the justice, the concept is critical. That the earth, before the end of time, last night I said that Shia, because of belief in the occultation and the 12th Imam and the return of the 12th Imam, is known to be an eschatological school of thought. What does that mean? It means that before the end of time, somebody is going to come that establishes justice on earth before the end of time and wrapping of everything takes place. Before the end of time, you need justice to be prevailed. So let's start with some biographical information about the life of the 12th Imam. The life of the 12th Imam has to be divided into 3 sections. From birth to the proclamation of Imamah, which is literally 5 years. 255 to 260, which is the Imam Al-Hasan Al-Askari was martyred. And Imam Al-Mahdi comes out and claims that he is the righteous and the rightful successor to Imam Hassan al-Askari. And after that, he goes into occultation. So the first phase is from birth to the proclamation of Imam. 255 to 260, which is 5 years. Second phase is the minor occultation, sometimes referred to as short occultation or short concealment within literature, from 260 to 329 Hijri. By the way, all of these numbers, figures, and so on are in Hijri context, Hijri lunar calendar. So 260 to 329, which is 69 years, this is the period of minor or short occultation or concealment. There is something unique about this period, and that is the presence of what we call 4 deputies. The whole notion of having 4 deputies so that cautiously and carefully the Muslim or the Shia communities are led towards where ultimately there is no Imam to be contacted directly by individuals. The major occultation, which, by the way, according to these, unfortunately, some of these scholars are Shias as well that have written these books. That, yes, this is what we call an historical construct over time. It didn't exist. You see how academic post entices people to do certain things for the sake of claiming a professorship in a university that goes against the grain of the old document and proved and ahadith that we have. So during the short occultation, the 69 years, what distinguishes this period is the presence of 4 deputies appointed by the Imam Hassan al-Askari, and ultimately approved by Imam al-Mahdi at the time of the beginning of the minor occultation. Number 1, Uthman ibn Sa'id al-Amri. He was the deputy of Imam al-Mahdi salawatullah salamu alayhi in a period of occultation for the first 7 years. He died 267. So from 260 to 267. He was a disciple of Imam Hassan al-Askari and Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam, both of them. And he was appointed to become the deputy of Imam al-Mahdi, the first one. Muhammad ibn Uthman ibn Sa'id al-Amri, the son of Sa'id al-Amri. He is the one who served Imam al-Mahdi the longest, close to 38 years. He died 305. So from 267, when his father departs, to 305, he is the deputy. And in each of the stages that we have, the transition from one deputy into the other, this takes place through direct command of the Imam himself. A letter comes to one of the deputy informing him that you are going to depart towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in, say, 1 or 2 days. And you are commanded to appoint X, whether it's your son in the first case or others later on. So Uthman ibn Sa'id receives a letter commanding him that to appoint his son Muhammad, who again was one of the disciples of the Imam Hassan al-Askari. And he served up to year 305 when he died. After him, this is the link, the second link. Then the third one, Hussein ibn Ruh al-Nawbakhti, that served the Imam for nearly 20 years, from 305 to 326. Again, and 326 to 329, the shortest deputy is Ali ibn Muhammad Samri, which only served 3 years. All of these, their primary responsibility was to create the basis in which ultimately what we call the concept of wikala and leadership and scholarship within Shia Islam, that the role of the Imam as a guide for the society will be taken by the grand scholars that Imam appointed few of them or encouraged few of them, like Sheikh Mufid and Sheikh Tusi and others, and then move on into the next generation, cautiously guiding the society that soon there will be time that Imam is no longer to be visible and have direct contact with people. There should be a system. That system guides the society and guides the community and moves on. 6 days before Ali ibn Muhammad al-Samari, he receives a letter from the 12th Imam, Imam Al-Mahdi, that you are the last deputy and you will be departing in 6 days from now. You are not required to appoint anyone. Why? Because now we are transitioning from the minor occultation into a major occultation, that only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows when it will end according to certain requirements. Now, what are the requirements? Although the letter to Ali ibn Muhammad doesn't specify, but a hadith from Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq and Imam Muhammad al-Baqir clearly outlines and stipulates. When people are ready to submit to the command of the Imam wholeheartedly, Imam will terminate the occultation and sends his messenger back. So the question is, if we have stayed in major occultation for over 1,000 some years, it's not because that Imam doesn't want to come back. Read Dua al-Nudba and a number of other du'as clearly state that Imam is waiting and ready for us to be ready to accept him back. Now, after that, it becomes major occultation, which continues up to today. When it will end, we don't know. Last night, I briefly touched upon some of the conditions necessary for the end of the major occultation, and I even stated that these figures could be metaphorical use of to indicate just few or exact numbers, 313, 330, etc. The first victory of Islam in the Battle of Badr started with 300, close to 30 individuals. The final victory over tyranny, again, has to happen with 330 individuals. The same way that the initial 330 submitted wholeheartedly to the command of the Holy Prophet, this 330 will wholeheartedly submit to the command of the Imam. And until those numbers are there, what in the political language, political science language, we call them the political base. Political base is the presence of individuals that wholeheartedly buy into a particular ideology and are prepared to stand by it no matter what. The absence of the political base is what led to the failure of the Imams successively, from Amir al-Mu'mineen up to the Imam al-Mahdi. It wasn't because the Imams were not capable or they were not qualified, far from it. They were qualified to reign. Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullah salam alayhi, famous hadith or kalimat qasar, short saying, he says, we have the right to lead. This is non-negotiable. But if the political base is absent, we will be marginalized. And that's what has happened so far. Imam Sajjad wasn't able, Imam Hussein wasn't able, Imam Hassan wasn't able, and the rest of the Imams were not able, because the political base, committed individuals that are prepared to submit to the command of the Imam no matter what, were absent. Now, to follow these, there are a number of, some little bit of biographical account. We don't have exact information about the mother of Imam al-Mahdi. Yes, we have a name mentioned, Narjis. What was her background? There is nothing clear. although there is a stipulation that she was a Roman princess or somehow from Africa, and few other comments about it. The name was mentioned, whether she came to some early on during the life of Imam Hassan al-Askari or Imam al-Hadi and was kept there because she had a mission. That's, again, we have to go back to the history. To the date of birth, the year is definite, 255. But the exact date, the most famous, is 15th of Sha'ban, month and the date. But there are some others who claim to be other month rather than 15th of Sha'ban. Most accepted within the Shia tradition. As far as sibling, we don't have any other evidence that Imam Zaman, Imam Al-Mahdi salawatullah salam alayhi has brothers and sisters. Nothing. It's silent. All the historical tradition doesn't say much about the sibling. Although some historians have indicated, yes, there is a brother and a sister, but from what I have looked at in Mawsu'at and major books, the major historians simply stay away from stipulating one way or the other. Another issue that has come and people constantly send, as soon as you start talking about the life of Imam al-Mahdi, what happened during the occultation? Is he married or is he not? Did he get married and have children or didn't he? So naturally, historians who have written about the life of Imam al-Mahdi, they had to address these questions. And when it comes to this issue, there are three major views. There are those who say yes, and within our contemporary history, Sayyid Muhammad Sadr in his Mawsu'at al-Imam al-Mahdi talks about this, and he appeals to a number of ahadith and few dua that says that yes, Imam al-Mahdi during the occultation actually married and produced children. There is a no that they say the essence of occultation is what we call anonymity, that to be unknown. And you can't be unknown if you come out to approach somebody and ask somebody's hand in marriage. Well, that depends on how we interpret the whereabouts of the Imam. Somehow we accept that the Imam is present among us and we may see him and not recognize him, or somehow Imam is isolated from the rest of the community in some obscure island. All the scholars' opinion recently is towards the first approach, that Imam, when we speak about, if we look at ahadith, du'as and so on, Imam says, I am living with you. I see what you go through. I suffer the pain that you go through. And it pains me when you disobey. Because according to the hadith, our deeds are presented to the living Imam every morning and every evening. So he is there with us. So the notion that somehow occultation marginalized him into some green island somewhere in the middle of nowhere, it has to be rejected. And the third view is that people such as Sayyid Ja'far Murtada al-Amali in his book about Imam al-Mahdi, he simply walks around this issue and doesn't address it. Now, few questions again constantly being presented. How can we tell who is Imam al-Mahdi despite numerous claims made by different individuals? Well, for the Shias, at least the 12ers, we know a clear stipulation starting from the life of the Holy Prophet, one by one. The Holy Prophet says, after me is Ali, then Hassan, then Hussein, and so on until the end of the last one, the 12. Amir al-Mu'mineen says the same thing. Other Imams, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq talks about the sixth person that would come after him is going to be the Imam al-Mahdi who goes into occultation. So this list of names and ahadith in our ahadith are clearly established, so we don't need to debate it. Why is it necessary for the Imam to be living? And can't we accept that the Imam is not born, but eventually will be born in some distant future? This question rests on what we call a theological, in essence, a theological question. Sunnis claim that yes, the world needs the establishment of justice one day on earth. But what they assert is that that person doesn't have to be born now. It's possible that we wait until he returns. The Shia, on the other hand, refers to the concept that the earth cannot be empty of a hujjah and a sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that has authority on earth. بأن الأرض لا تبقى خاليا عن الحجة. That earth cannot be devoid of the presence of an appointedly guided individual. Why? I mean, there are a number of them. And similar ahadith عن الإمام الباقر لو بقيت الأرض بغير إمام لساخت. If there was no Imam in any of the period, then earth is going to collapse. That's the end of it. This is why at the end of time, when the life of the Imam comes to an end, is literally the wrapping up the world and the end of everything. And الرضا, the Imam Rida alayhi salatu wassalam, إن الأرض لا تخلو من الحجة, cannot be devoid of some divinely appointed individual. So that people do not think about, well, hujjah means anyone. وَأَنَا وَاللَّهِ ذَلِكَ الْحُجَّةِ. I am the Imam of my time. There is a hadith, even narrated by a number of scholars from Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. من مات ولم يعرف إمام زمانه مات ميتة جاهلية. If somebody dies and does not have a clear conception of who is the living Imam is, then might as well that person has died a Jahiliyyah death. So this is necessary. Why? Because Imam is the link between Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and humanity. Those of you who were present during the month of Ramadan when we're talking about Layal al-Qadr, we discussed this briefly, that on the night of power, Malaika, the angels, descend on whom? On the Imam, on the living Imam. They bring the news to whom? Again, to the living Imam. The destiny of the world will be decided before whom? The living Imam. Because Imam is the source or the link between Allah's mercy and the human being. If you remove that source, the earth will finish. There is a book in Al-Kafi, Kitab al-Hujjah, Baba inna al-ard la takhlu min al-Hujjah. Again, huge number of ahadith in various books about the life of Imam Al-Mahdi has been listed. Another question again is the age of Imam. How can somebody live 1,200 years or so? Well, scholars have approached this from a different angle. Some have resorted to biological explanation and say that from a biological point of view, there is nothing particularly to stop humans to live long life, particularly if there is no impediment to the long life. Quran certainly talks about Nuh, Khidr, Luqman, Musa, Ibrahim, that they all have relatively, compared to our age, which is average is 70, 75 years, Nuh at least 900 years of prophethood. Musa, according to some tradition, was 180, 190 years old when he died. Harun, his brother, probably more than him. Ibrahim was around 100 years old when he asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant him a son. And Ismail was born. And he is around according to some tradition, was around 150 when he departed. Khidr certainly is one of the characters that is still living. Remember the story of Musa and Khidr. It's the same Khidr that met with Musa during Musa's time and is still living up to today. Which certainly his age is far beyond the life of the Imam Al-Mahdi. And others have resorted to what we call miracle and the wish of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have to leave that for the time being until the right time for the discussion. Another issue that we really need to be mindful within this biographical account is what happens to the life of Imam Al-Mahdi after he comes to lead the war. According to our tradition, after leading the world towards establishment of justice and becoming the governor, the global governor for 70 years, he will be poisoned. Some people say by a woman, some people say by others, but certainly he's going to be poisoned and die and be martyred. That's the concept of raj'ah, the return of our Imams, whether Prophet Isa comes before his death or after his death, these are something that we can debate. And with the coming to an end of the life of the Holy Imam, we are literally beginning of the end of time. The whole world is going to go through a catastrophic account of wrapping up everything, and that's the end of it. Inshallah, there were a number of questions posed by brothers and sisters during the preliminary discussion, that now that the brief biographical account is clear and some of the issues have been addressed, then we can focus on those questions every night that there is an opportunity, inshallah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the privilege of being among the true followers of Ahlul Bayt, particularly our living Imam, inshallah, by correcting our deeds and reflecting on our behavior. May Allah bless you all. Thank you very much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.